First at 9 this Friday, the 19th of July 2024. Vocational overhaul. President Ranil Wickremesinghe calls for a single entity to be established in order to oversee all vocational training centres. Mid-flight U-turn. Cabinet terminates sale process of Sri Lankan Airlines, reveals the SOE restructuring unit. Windows shut. Massive global outage of Microsoft Windows operating system brings international institutions to a standstill. Gazetted. 22nd Amendment to the Constitution published in the Government Gazette. Nothing to fear from the amendment, assures the President.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now in your top story tonight, President Ranil Wickremesinghe called for the establishment of one entity to oversee post-school education and all vocational training centres with the aim of updating and modernising vocational colleges. He went on to emphasize on the importance of building a highly competitive, modern, export-oriented economy, further noting that financial capital is a crucial aspect in ensuring the development of human capital. The Sri Lankan Human Capital Summit 2024 was held at the Temple Trees yesterday under the theme of unlocking Sri Lanka's economic potential by building a future-ready workforce, focusing on nurturing, harnessing and amplifying human capital. The summit was graced by former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
Why will people leave and go somewhere else? Because they believe there are better opportunities somewhere else. And so, if you're to retain your talent here, then there has to be a very good reason to stay here. There has to be a strong belief in the future of the Sri Lankan economy and its community, which will encourage people to remain, to invest, take up opportunities and to go that extra yard. The courageous plan that has been put in place over fiscal repair, on revenue reforms, on debt restructuring, all of these things which President Wickremesinghe has been leading are so vital to Sri Lanka's future that you actually don't even get to talk about a workforce in the future unless you can continue the commitment and determination to address those challenges. I would come and reinforce the urgency of staying on that path in the years ahead, so Sri Lankans can see that there is an economic future there for them and their families as they move into the next decade. The second one I'd argue for in partnerships is a closer economic relationship with India, one that would see your economies integrated, your energy sectors integrated, your banking sectors integrated, your payment systems, all of these things which can open up a new type of economy here in the subcontinent, which Sri Lanka will be the biggest beneficiary of.
When I brought the economic transformation bill, one party in parliament went to courts and said it should be rejected because we require import substitution economy. So first and foremost, we must get out of our heads that there are no such thing called an import substitution economy. How do you substitute for your economy, for your imports? You still need the raw material abroad. So what we have to first undertake and commit ourselves is to a highly competitive, modern, export-oriented economy. We have to get the rest of Sri Lanka also to agree to it. That's a small problem. Without having financial capital, you can't develop your human capital. We can't tackle everything at the same time. So first, we have to look at the vocational and the technical sector. I want to have one single agency for this area, which will look after post-school education. All the training centers, as they are called, there may be about 700 or 800 in the country run by the government alone, to be merged into about 300 vocational colleges, which then can be updated and modernized. That's what we have to do. Replace the technical colleges of varying standards with advanced colleges of technology and management and be able to introduce the associate degree in the technical and vocational subjects. I think we must relook at the NVQ qualification and bring it in line with the Australian ones, which is accepted internationally and which makes provision for the associate degree. What we need is assistance from outside to develop these systems. We are so far used to asking an aid project, which is mainly consists of buildings and some equipment. We go away with that. I will not allow anyone to get money for putting up buildings. The foreign assistance we require, the central will have to decide, will be to strengthen and modernize the system. So in this respect, one of the countries which I will reach out to is Australia.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Now, the Cabinet has terminated the current sale process of the national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines. In a statement, Sri Lanka's state-owned restructuring unit said that the government will now follow an alternate strategy to be decided on shortly to divest the airline based on a framework approved by the Cabinet. Considering the deep-rooted economic crisis that collapsed Sri Lanka to rock bottom in 2022, the government decided to restructure certain loss-making state-owned enterprises in a bid to strengthen state coffers. The list of those SOEs included the national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines. Before 2008, Sri Lankan Airlines, which was then called Air Lanka, operated as a private-public partnership with Emirates. Subsequently, the Sri Lankan government took over full control of the national carrier following an acquisition of shares held by Emirates. Within the span of 13 years since 2008, Sri Lankan Airlines accumulated a total debt burden of around $1.1 billion. As the company's debt burden grew rapidly amidst the national economic crisis, in August 2022, the government announced that 49% of its shares in Sri Lankan Airlines and its management would be transferred to a competent investor chosen through a transparent procurement procedure. Subsequently, in March 2023, the Cabinet of Ministers granted in-principle approval for the divestiture of shares held by the government of Sri Lanka in Sri Lankan Airlines. Later, transaction advisors were appointed for Sri Lankan Airlines, while the private sector arm of the World Bank Group, the International Finance Corporation, was appointed as the lead advisor for the national carrier. Initially, deadlines were given until the 5th of December 2023 to submit expressions of interest to purchase a stake in Sri Lankan Airlines. However, the deadline was extended 3 times to the 9th of January, the 5th of March 2024 and the 22nd of April 2024. During this period, Air Asia Consulting, Darshan Elite Investment Holdings Private Limited, FITS Aviation Private Limited, Sharisha Technologies Private Limited, Treasure Republic Guardians Limited and Haley's PLC submitted their requests for proposals. In May this year, it was revealed that Sharisha Technologies Private Limited, Air Asia Consulting and Haley's PLC were shortlisted to further engage in the acquisition process. However, Sri Lanka's state-owned enterprise restructuring unit, based at the Ministry of Finance, today stated that the Cabinet of Ministers has terminated the current sale process of Sri Lankan Airlines. The decision was made at the Cabinet meeting which was held on the 9th of July. In a statement, Sri Lanka's state-owned enterprise restructuring unit said that the government will now follow an alternate strategy to be decided on shortly to divest the airline based on a framework approved by the Cabinet of Ministers.
Horizon Campus 2024 intake. Register now.
Now, in other news, the draft bill on the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution has been published in the Government Gazette by order of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Addressing the media today, the Election Commission assured that the amendment in question will not have an impact on the upcoming presidential election.
At the Cabinet meeting held on the 9th of July, a proposal was put forward to amend Article 83B of the Constitution, which reads a bill for the amendment or for the repeal and replacement of, or which is inconsistent with the provisions of paragraph 2 of Article 30 or of paragraph 2 of Article 62, which would extend the term of office of the President or the duration of Parliament, as the case may be, to over 6 years. Through the amendment, the Cabinet seeks to remove the phrase "to over 6 years" in Article 83B of the Constitution and replace it with "to over 5 years," eliminating the ambiguity surrounding the parameters of the President's term in office. Following the approval of the paper by the Cabinet, a draft bill was prepared in the name of the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution and referred to the Attorney General for clearance. Following clearance by the Attorney General, the Cabinet at its meeting on the 15th of July approved the publication of the bill in the Government Gazette. However, yesterday, Minister of Justice Dr. Vijay Dasarajapaksa instructed his Ministry Secretary not to publish the Gazette notification on the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution until the presidential election is held. The Justice Minister claimed that this decision was made in order to eliminate the uncertainty regarding the holding of the presidential election. However, yesterday, the amendment to the Constitution was published via a Gazette notification by order of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Against this backdrop, the Election Commission assured that this development would not have an impact on the upcoming presidential election.
ඔබ දන්නා ඕනම රටක අපිට බලපවත්වන නීතිය තමයි අපිට ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න තියෙන්නේ. මේ වෙනකොට මේ රටේ ආණ්ඩුව ව්‍යවස්ථාවේ සාධාරණ ආකාරයට කටයුතු කිරීම තමයි කමිෂන් සභාව බැඳී සිටින. යනවා අපිට කිසිදු ආකාරයක බලපෑමක් නැහැ මේ මෙතන ප්‍රකාශයට පත් කිරීමේ කටයුතු සඳහා.
ඔබතුමා විශ්වාස කරනවාද කිසිම බලපෑමකින් තොරව සාධාරණ මැතිවරණයක් ජනාධිපතිවරණයක්
එන්නා වූ ඕනෑම බලපෑමක් තුල දස සාධාරණ මැතිවරණයක් කරන්න කමිෂන් සභාවට ශක්තිය දෙන කියන්න පුළුවන්.
Now, meanwhile, President Ranil Wickremesinghe emphasizes that the constitutional amendment should not be a cause for panic. The head of state added that he is dedicated to preserving the country's proud democratic tradition.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe inaugurated a new court complex in Beligaha Gaol.
Of all the countries in Asia and Africa, Sri Lanka is the only country that has protected democracy since 1933. Sri Lanka is the only country that saw peaceful transfers of power following election losses. When General Sir John Kotalawala was told to remain in power, he did not. He handed power over to SWRD Bandaranayake. Don't worry, democracy still lives in this country. I'm surprised to hear certain remarks made by our people that Sri Lanka's democracy will die. Why are they making such remarks? We have taken the legislature, the judiciary and the political system of this country forward. Anyone can agree or disagree with the measures we take. None of these measures we take go against democracy. Let's unite to protect democracy. An election is drawing closer. It will be held as planned. The Supreme Court and the Chief Justice said that the election has to be held. We agree with it. Let me explain the background that has paved the way for different parties to claims regarding the election. We introduced a new amendment in 2015. Usually, I present those kinds of matters to Attorney-at-Law Choksi. However, he had already passed on at the time. Then I told Attorney-at-Law Jayampati Vikramaratne to look into the matter. While working on it, we were unable to exclude one sentence due to the lack of experience in that regard. That is the reason behind this outcry. That was a mistake made by him. As the person who appointed him, I would like to apologize to the people. There's no need to talk about this further. This happened due to a lack of experience. So I thought that I would hand over a matter like this to people with experience. This time I handed over this job to the Justice Minister.
Now let's see what politicians across the political spectrum had to say about the constitutional amendment.
Those who are not familiar with the Constitution may have doubts about its provisions. There are no issues related to the Constitution. The presidential election will be held before the 17th of October. We will abide by the Constitution. If there are any legal ambiguities or concerns, those must be rectified. That responsibility lies with the Parliament. I want to emphasize that there are no obstacles preventing the presidential election from proceeding as planned.
They claim publicly that the election will proceed as planned, yet behind the scenes they attempt to delay it. This country has a unique history in confusing the public as elections draw close. The actions of the incumbent government headed by the president stirs up that confusion. The incumbent president's goal appears to be to dismantle the electoral system in place at the moment. That's the reality of this situation.
මැතිවරණ ක්‍රියාදාමය අවුල් කරන එක තමයි ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ උමනා වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක තමයි ඇත්ත කතාව. 22 වෙනි සංශෝධනය නෙවෙයි.
As a party, we are indifferent to any constitutional amendments being introduced. If the 22nd Amendment proposes to reduce the president's term from 6 years to 5 years, our party will certainly consider it. If the 19th Amendment is repealed due to the 22nd Amendment, it could create an opportunity for Mahinda Rajapaksa to be nominated for a third term. Who knows? He might be the next candidate for the upcoming presidential election.
The 22nd Amendment only confirms the tenure of the president. It doesn't mean that Mahinda Rajapaksa can be nominated for the upcoming election.
Star dishwasher Dali Tel Indul Pahasuwen Sede. Star dishwasher magic tapika.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Welcome back. Now, a massive global outage of Microsoft's Windows operating system brought the operations of numerous international institutions across multiple sectors to a complete standstill. The Sri Lankan Computer Emergency Readiness Team disclosed that 4 Sri Lankan private entities as well as Sri Lankan Airlines were affected by the global outage.
At around 12 noon local time today, numerous global institutions reported a mass IT outage which brought their operations to a complete standstill. The cause of the outage appeared to be an issue with Microsoft's Windows operating system. The issue caused devices using the Windows operating system to crash and display a blue screen, known informally as the blue screen of death. Operations of numerous global institutions across multiple industries were severely affected by the outage. Healthcare providers, airlines, financial institutions and media outlets were affected the most. Over 1,000 flights were grounded as the tech outage disrupted the operations of several airlines as well as airports across the world. Meanwhile, banks and financial services firms around the world warned customers of possible disruptions, while there were also reports of the London Stock Exchange being impacted. Several international media outlets were also affected as the United Kingdom's BBC and Sky News networks, as well as Australia's ABC network, experienced interruptions to their live broadcasts. Australia and New Zealand were particularly hard hit, with New Zealand's parliament experiencing a disruption in its computer network, while banks, supermarkets and media outlets across Australia and New Zealand had their operations brought to a standstill. The outage also hampered preparations for the upcoming Paris Olympics. Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Computer Emergency Readiness Team disclosed that 4 private entities in Sri Lanka were also affected by the mass global outage. Sri Lanka Airlines was also affected by the outage. However, the national carrier releasing a statement said that its internet booking services were fully restored by 2 p.m. and instructed passengers to contact its global contact center for further assistance with existing or new bookings. The cause of the outage was revealed to be a defect of US-based CrowdStrike's Falcon server software. Microsoft released a statement earlier in the evening saying that the underlying cause of the global outage had been resolved, but warned residual impact of the outage will continue to affect some Office 365 apps and services.
Now, the Department of Immigration and Immigration has announced that onwards from today, passports will only be issued to applicants who have made prior appointments through the department's website. However, the first day of the new passport issuance procedure was interrupted by tensions.
The Department of Immigration and Immigration on Wednesday announced that prior online registration will be required when applying for a passport. The department added that the new methodology will be effective from today. Accordingly, applicants were required to reserve a date and time through the www.immigration.gov.lk website in order to obtain or renew a passport. The statement highlighted that the requirement will apply to both the one-day service as well as the general service. Against such a backdrop, long queues were observed in front of the offices of the Department of Immigration and Immigration in Battaramulla today as people waited to be issued with passports. A tense situation arose when department officials announced that passports will only be issued to applicants who had made appointments via the online registration system. The police and the riot control unit of the police had to be deployed to control the situation. Public, inconvenienced by the situation, complained that the change in the passport issuance procedure and the requirement for prior online registration was not properly communicated. In the wake of the confusion, Controller General of the Department of Immigration and Immigration, Harsha Ilukpitiya, called the media briefing to explain the new passport issuance procedure.
We implemented this procedure change in order to conduct the department's operations with more transparency. In the past, accusations were leveled at the department claiming that certain individuals were taking bribes when accepting passport applications. Therefore, following extensive studies of the system, we introduced a better procedure. Going forward, passports will not be issued to anyone who does not first reserve a date and a time. I reiterate my request to everyone to reserve a date and time before coming to the department's offices.
Welcome back. Now, while welcoming Sri Lanka's agreements on debt restructuring, a visiting Japanese business delegation expressed their readiness to resume stalled Japanese official development assistance projects in Sri Lanka. They expressed this during their meeting with President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
A meeting between a high-level Japanese delegation comprising representatives from the housing, construction and urban sectors and President Ranil Wickremesinghe convened at the President's Secretariat yesterday.
We congratulate your successful negotiations with the IMF and on the agreement with creditor nations. We also congratulate Sri Lanka on the successful completion of the nation's debt restructuring process. We have come to Sri Lanka to discuss plans on ODA projects, including resuming existing projects.
We are thankful to the government of Japan for all the help that was given to us in our negotiations with our OCC as well as the bondholders. That process is now coming to a close, and for us one issue is the resumption of agreements that was signed between our two countries on a number of projects. We are also looking at the future economic cooperations between our two countries. In many areas that we are focusing on now, we'd like to discuss the issues in education, in agricultural modernization, and in other sectors that we have planned out. But first we would like, I think we have to resume from where we left off.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Ada Derana First at 9. Stay in touch with us on www.adaderana.lk for the latest developments around the clock. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.